At some point in our lives, most of us have had the experience where we walk up on perhaps the tail end of a conversation or a conversation that's already in progress, and we hear something that just doesn't quite make sense. Now, if we're wise, we kind of keep our mouths shut and we realize, I'm missing a large part of the conversation, I should just be quiet. But sometimes we're foolish and we open our mouths and we respond to the little piece of information that we heard, and then we're quite embarrassed when we realize we were missing the context in which it said. And had we had that context, it would have changed the whole meaning of that little phrase. I mention that because if you listen to me preach long enough, one phrase that you will undoubtedly get tired of hearing me say is context matters. I almost want to put it on a t-shirt or a bumper sticker or a hashtag. Context matters. And especially when we are hearing the scriptures proclaimed here in Mass. Because we can approach what we just heard in one of two ways. We can focus simply on these 6 verses of the 10th chapter of Mark's Gospel, this story of a blind man being healed, and say, okay, what's God telling us today through that gospel? And that's worthwhile. That's a good exercise, and I hope to demonstrate that in a minute. But there's another deeper, more fuller understanding that comes with realizing that this story is not meant to be read in its isolation, but it is strategically placed in the gospel to tell a larger story. But without that context, that meaning can be lost. So let's try to see what I'm talking about. Let's start by just looking at this story, Mark chapter 10, verses 46 through 52. You can all open your Bibles to that. Just kidding, right? Don't be afraid to bring a Bible to Mass, though. It's okay. So we look at this story and we hear about this man, Bartimaeus. His name literally means son of Timaeus, right? We don't get his actual first name, but that was a very common way of referring to people in the Old Testament by who was their father. So Jesus would be Jesus, son of Joseph, or Peter was Simon Bar-Jonah, son of Jonah. So that anonymity of this man just being known as the son of Timaeus is really important, because what it allows us to do is all of us to relate to Bartimaeus. It doesn't matter what his name is. What matters is that he is blind, he is sitting on the road, and he is begging. And what Bartimaeus shows us, he shows us 3 things. One, despite his difficulty, his infirmity, if you will, his disability, he doesn't allow himself to be overcome with self-pity. Life is harder for him in some ways. It's a cross to bear. And yet he doesn't just wallow in this idea of, poor, poor me, why did God allow me to be blind? What did I do to deserve this? We don't hear that from Bartimaeus. Instead, what we hear in a demonstration is also that he is not overly self-reliant. He knows that what's going on in his life, his blindness, is not something that he can fix on himself. It's that dangerous spirit of pride that says, if it's meant to be, it's up to me. I'll pull myself up to heaven by my own bootstraps. If my life is to be fixed, then I will be the one to do that. It's a very dangerous spiritual attitude. And Bartimaeus shows us the humble approach of saying, I know this is something in my life that I can't fix. But I think I know the one who can, and so I'm going to cry out to him. And so he does. He calls out Jesus. Now, this is the first time in Mark's gospel where we hear Jesus referred to by his proper name. Jesus. And then he says something very important. He says, son of David. Wait a minute, I thought Jesus' dad was Joseph. What Bartimaeus is doing is he's using a Jewish phrase that every Jew at the time would recognize for the Messiah. He is of the line of David. He is the son of David, the son of man, the son of God. Jesus, you are the Messiah. It's a great confession of faith. And for the first time in Mark's gospel, remember, context matters, for the first time, Jesus doesn't say, shh, don't tell anybody who I am. He allows it. He allows Bartimaeus to cry out, Jesus, son of David, have pity on me. And it's the disciples who are trying to quiet him because they don't understand. But he calls out again, and he teaches us the third thing, to be persistent in prayer. Not only not to wallow in self-pity, not to be overly self-reliant, but in asking God for what you need, be persistent. And don't allow others to discourage you from seeking the good things from God that you need. Ignore the voices that tell you you're wasting your time. Why do you go to Mass? It's a waste of time. Go to brunch instead. Why pray? It doesn't do anything. Bad things keep happening. We hear those voices, and we have to tune them out. So this blind beggar on the side of the road, these 6 verses have a lot to teach us about our spiritual life. Now, I could stop there, sit down, and we'd be happy, and it's a short homily, so go ahead and sit down, Father, right? But I haven't made my point yet. Context matters, because these aren't just 6 verses in isolation. They are intentionally placed here in the 10th chapter, along with another story of a healing of a blind person back in the 8th chapter. 2 chapters ago, I know it was like 6 weeks, we've forgotten it. But in that story, Jesus heals a blind man gradually. He touches him and he gets a little bit of his sight. He sees shadowy figures. He sees people walking like trees. And Jesus touches him again and he gets his sight back. What Mark is doing is he's bookending a very important part of his gospel. These 2 healings of blind people are like the bread in what we call a Markan sandwich. Well, how do we define a sandwich? Not by the bread, but by the meat. What's in the middle? Those are the 3 predictions of the Passion that we've just heard about these last few weeks. Jesus telling his disciples on the road to Jerusalem that he will suffer and die at the hands of the Jewish officials simply because of who he claims to be. And it's through his passion, death, and resurrection that people will be saved. And yet we know the disciples didn't get it. Gradually, their minds were being enlightened. They begin to see gradually like that first blind person. And what Jesus is now telling us is that there will come a moment when your sight will be restored. When you will see Jesus Christ, Jesus the Son of David, as the Messiah whom he truly is. And that moment in the gospel story where we are is yet to come. It's when they see him on the cross. Truly, this man was the Son of God. And when they see him rise from the dead, then they reflect back. They reflect back on all that he has done, this time of mystagogia, where they go back and they realize, oh, that's what he meant. Now I see. Now it makes sense to me. So you see how Mark is using these 2 stories to get our attention and to say, hey, focus on what's in the middle. I'm not just telling you that Jesus is a miracle worker. I'm telling you that he's the Messiah, the Son of God, and you do not understand it yet. You do not see as you will yet. But when he opens your eyes, when he enlightens you through his passion, death, and resurrection, then you will see. So what do we do with all this? Well, I think first of all, we recognize that we're not that different than Bartimaeus. It really doesn't matter what our name is, what job we hold, how much money we have. All of us are those blind beggars on the side of the road in need of God's mercy, his healing, and forgiveness. And so we should call out to him. Jesus, Son of David, have pity on me. Sounds a lot like the Jesus prayer. Jesus, Son of God, have mercy on me, a sinner. Just to repeat that in our prayer over and over, to recognize that we are in need of his healing and we can't heal ourselves. And we should be persistent, even if it seems like God is doing nothing. But also we echo that cry of Bartimaeus that says, Lord, you know what you can do for me? You can help me to see. Remove the scales from my eyes that blind me. First, allow me to realize that I don't see the whole picture. Sometimes I think I know exactly what's going on, and I form judgments on that, and it has all these emotions and feelings because I think I see everything. And the truth is, Tom, you don't have the whole story. There's more to this than you know. There's times where I look at life and the world around me and I think, God, what are you doing? Why have you not cured cancer? Why have you not ended this pandemic? Why do you allow this brokenness in our families and this pain and this hurt? I thought you came to save us. Where are you? I need to see, Lord. I need to see that that really happened, that that's not a story, and that actually did win our salvation and save us, Lord. I need to see that you are real, that you are true, and that you love me. I need to see. Because there are times when not just I look at the world around us, but in my sinfulness, I look at other people around us. And I think, man, you want me to love them? Only God can love them. So help me to see what you see, Lord. You created them just like me in your image and likeness. You knit them together in their mother's womb. You have made them fearfully and wonderfully, and you love them into their existence, even when I think at times they're directly antithetical to what you're trying to do in the world. So tell me, Lord, show me, how do you love them? How do you love the person who abandoned me? How do you love the person who fired me, who hurt me, who abused me, who neglected me? How do you love these politicians that are so against everything I stand for? Or maybe for some, our Holy Father, our bishop, our pastor. Lord, show me how you love them, because I struggle to see. And perhaps the most difficult of all, when I look in the mirror. Lord, why do you love me? After all that I've done, all that I continue to struggle with, all that I've failed to do in living up to who you created me to be, show me how you love me enough to do that, to suffer and die for me, to become sin so that I could free from sin, to come so that I may have joy and have it more abundantly, to have life, to have it more abundantly. Show me, Lord. Because how can I love anyone else if I don't truly love myself? That's the commandment we hear next week. And so, Lord, I need you to show me. I need to see. Because I want to be like Bartimaeus, that when my sight is given to me and I see the world as you see, Lord, I want to get up, cast my cloak aside, put my old life behind me, and I want to follow you to the cross, into the tomb, to the glory of resurrection. I want to follow you, Lord. But I need to know the way. I want my heart to be filled with joy at the good things that you are doing. So to wrap all this up, I think the invitation for us this week in prayer is just simply that statement, that cry of Bartimaeus. Jesus, Son of David, have pity on me and let me see. I need to see how you see, Lord, to love how you love, to forgive how you forgive, and teach others to do the same. So, Lord, let me see.